Galactic arena crowds mocked human warriors. Until one stepped into the ring, the galactic arena towered above the city like a monument to power and spectacle. Its shimmering spires reflected the suns of 3 distant systems, while enormous screens broadcasted every detail of the upcoming battles across multiple galaxies. Below, crowds of countless species gathered, filling terraces with color, noise, and expectation. They came not just to watch fights, but to witness dominance, the display of strength from the galaxy's most powerful warriors. Rumors of new fighters spread quickly through the arena's communication channels, and whispers ran like wildfire. Humans were arriving. Humans were considered fragile, weak, and hopelessly outclassed. Their homeworld, a small, low-gravity planet at the edge of explored space, had never produced warriors capable of surviving even a minor skirmish with stronger alien species. Entire histories of combat on other worlds dismissed humans as entertaining curiosities at best. To most spectators, humans were almost invisible among the galaxy's fierce combatants, but the arena had rules. Every species had to get a chance to fight, and humans, despite all expectations, had been allowed in. In one of the holding chambers, a group of human warriors waited quietly. Their uniforms were simple, designed for mobility rather than protection, and their faces reflected a mixture of nervousness, resolve, and quiet defiance. Unlike other species that wore ornate armor and weaponry, humans carried only basic gear, a few knives, and some handheld devices for defense. The chamber buzzed with conversation in languages the humans did not understand. Alien voices shouted orders, mocked the humans openly, and laughed at their small frames. Yet in this room of jeers and disdain, one human stood apart. He was quiet, observing, calm, as if he had expected all of this. His name was Jerk, and he did not speak. He simply studied the others, the guards, and the murmuring crowd that filtered through the viewing windows above. The other humans looked to him for reassurance, though none knew why they trusted him. "We don't stand a chance," one whispered. Another tried to steady his trembling hands, muttering under his breath about survival. Jerk's gaze never left the arena beyond the chamber. He was already calculating, noting the dimensions, the hazards, and the way the arena's surface reflected the artificial lights. He noticed the platforms, the small alcoves, the walls, and even the way the alien guards moved with precision and arrogance. Every detail mattered, and Jerk took mental notes as though the entire arena were a puzzle waiting for the right move. The doors to the chamber opened with a metallic hiss, and alien overseers stepped in, their expressions filled with mockery. They had names humans could not pronounce, but their intentions were clear. "The entertainment begins," one sneered. "Watch these tiny creatures fight." "It will be amusing." The humans were nudged forward, pushed toward the starting platform. The arena itself stretched out before them, vast and designed to challenge even the strongest warriors. Holographic projections highlighted traps, changing terrain, and artificial hazards meant to test adaptability, strength, and courage. As the humans stepped into the open arena, the sound of the crowd hit them like a wave. Screeches, laughter, and alien cheers assaulted their ears. Screens around the arena displayed their small figures as if they were toys. "Look at them," an alien shouted. "Pathetic," another chimed in. "They will last minutes, maybe seconds." The humans kept their heads low, moving cautiously, their instincts screaming caution. But Jerk walked slowly, confidently, as if the audience did not matter. He felt no fear of the spectacle. They expected weakness, and he intended to observe first, survive second, and perhaps, if the opportunity arose, astonish them later. The first challenge came quickly. A towering alien warrior, 3 times the height of the tallest human, was released into the arena. Its armor gleamed like a mirror under the arena lights, reflecting the crowd's excitement. It carried a massive energy staff that hummed with lethal power. The humans were told to fight or be dismissed as cowards. Many froze, paralyzed by the enormity of the opponent. A few attempted to charge, only to be easily knocked aside. The crowd roared with laughter at each failed attempt, reveling in their expected entertainment. "Pathetic," a voice shouted. "They cannot even touch it." The alien warrior moved with terrifying grace, stepping around the humans, deflecting their feeble attacks and showing no mercy. Several humans fell in seconds, their limbs battered, their pride shattered, their hope flickering. Jerk did not move until the alien was close. Then, with careful precision, he sidestepped, avoided the staff's strike, and ducked under a blow that could have crushed him. His movements were deliberate, almost minimal, conserving energy while observing patterns. He noticed how the alien shifted its weight, how its strikes had predictable sequences, and how it momentarily paused after each heavy swing. Unlike the others, Jerk did not attack recklessly. He let the alien expose itself, waited for mistakes, and adapted his position continuously. The crowd grew restless. This human, unlike the others, did not panic. It was unusual enough to make some spectators pause their laughter. The first humans to fall were dragged off the arena by hovering drones, their bodies battered but alive. They were lucky. Death was a real possibility for some species during the games. Others who tried to fight blindly were humiliated. The arena announcer, a booming mechanical voice, mocked the humans continuously, commenting on their weakness and lack of natural weapons. The screen zoomed in on Jerk now, capturing his calm expression, his eyes sharp, focused. The audience began to murmur. Whispers of curiosity replaced laughter. "Why is this one still standing?" one alien spectator asked. "Is it defiance or stupidity?" another responded. The tension in the arena shifted, the first subtle hint that humans might not be as predictable as they seemed. Jerk moved silently, avoiding unnecessary conflict. The alien staff wielder swung with increasing frustration, unable to land a decisive hit. Jerk's endurance alone became a spectacle, and some of the more analytical spectators noticed the human's adaptability. Even without power or brute strength, he moved with efficiency, exploiting every misstep. In those moments, a truth began to emerge, barely perceptible at first. Humans were not the weakest, merely underestimated. Every species in the arena had strength and natural advantages, but humans had something else: resilience, observation, and patience. The announcer tried to cover it with humor, but it faltered. The crowd, which had expected a short, comedic match, found themselves watching intently. The quiet human had become the center of attention, not for his power, but for his unexpected endurance. Every dodge, every subtle shift in position drew eyes. Children of multiple species watched in amazement. Elder warriors murmured to each other, noting the human's survival instinct. Jerk had done nothing flashy, nothing cruel, nothing remarkable by alien standards, but he had survived when survival was deemed impossible. Minutes passed, and the first rounds concluded. The humans who remained were exhausted, but they were not defeated. The crowd, previously filled with derision, now murmured in disbelief. "He is still alive," one said quietly, almost afraid to voice it. "How?" another whispered. Even the alien overseers were beginning to rethink their assumptions. Jerk did not celebrate or boast. He simply exhaled slowly, his eyes scanning the arena, noting which opponents were next, which terrain offered cover, and how the spectators reacted. The first part of the arena challenge was over, but the humans had survived longer than anyone expected. For the first time in the galaxy, some began to wonder. Perhaps humans were more dangerous than they appeared. As the chamber doors reopened to bring in the next wave of combatants, Jerk stood, adjusting his gear. He looked at the other humans, offering no words, only a glance of assurance. He had not yet fought to win, but he had already begun to shift perceptions. The galaxy that had laughed at humans might not be laughing for long. Small as they were, fragile as they seemed, these humans had one thing others underestimated completely: the will to endure, to adapt, and to survive against impossible odds. In the next round, the stakes would grow higher, but Jerk was ready. He knew the arena demanded strength, yes, but it rewarded strategy, endurance, and the human heart, a combination no one had yet understood. The arena's air shimmered with anticipation as the next wave of combatants prepared to enter. The crowd, once filled with laughter at the human warriors, now murmured in quiet speculation. Some of the elder spectators leaned forward, eyes narrowing as they observed Jerk's calm stance. He had survived the first round not by strength, but by patience and calculation. And the galaxy had taken notice. Across species, rumors began to ripple through the audience. Perhaps humans were not as weak as everyone assumed. The holding chamber opened once more, and the next opponent stepped in. It was unlike the last, a creature of sinewy muscle, its limbs ending in razor-like claws, and its skin patterned with shifting colors that reflected the arena lights. It moved with predatory grace, every motion fluid and deliberate. Its eyes, glowing faintly, scanned the arena as though it could sense weakness. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium, mocking the humans, calling them fragile, soft, and pitiful. The crowd cheered, eager to witness the spectacle of what they expected to be another quick victory. The human group shifted nervously. Their basic gear felt even more inadequate against this new opponent. Yet Jerk stood forward, his eyes calm, scanning. He had learned from the first encounter. The arena, the opponent, the terrain, all were puzzles to solve. He noticed how the creature moved, its weight distribution, the way it adjusted its speed depending on its opponent. Unlike the other humans, who trembled and hesitated, Jerk approached slowly, methodically, assessing every detail. When the battle began, panic overtook many of the human fighters. A few charged, hoping to strike, only to be swept aside by the alien's claws. Screams and thuds echoed as they fell. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, mocking the humans for their futile attempts. But Jerk did not act hastily. He let the creature advance, studying how it attacked, noting every rhythm and every opening. The creature was fast, lethal, and confident, but it had predictable patterns. Jerk moved with minimal motion, conserving energy and reducing exposure. He dodged, ducked, and rolled when necessary, using the terrain to his advantage. Rocks, uneven platforms, and shallow trenches became tools in his mind. Every movement was calculated. When the creature lunged, Jerk sidestepped, letting the attack pass harmlessly. The audience's laughter began to waver as they watched the human survive yet again. Some leaned forward in curiosity, whispering to one another. Even a few seasoned warriors from other species exchanged glances, realizing that this human's endurance and observation were unusual, perhaps unprecedented. Minutes passed, and Jerk began to test the creature. He used feints, small movements to provoke reactions. Each reaction gave him information, how fast it could pivot, how far it could reach, how it favored its limbs. Slowly, methodically, he began to exploit weaknesses the creature did not know it had. A swipe that would normally be blocked became a feint that left the creature off balance. A misstep by the alien allowed Jerk to slip past its defenses, keeping himself just out of reach while guiding it toward more hazardous terrain. The crowd, which had initially mocked the humans relentlessly, began to grow tense. Their laughter faded, replaced by murmurs of disbelief. "It's still alive," one spectator whispered. "How?" another muttered. Jerk's strategy was not about brute force. It was about endurance, observation, and patience. The creature, for all its skill and strength, was frustrated. Its attacks grew wider, less precise. It had never faced an opponent that refused to succumb, one that adapted faster than it could anticipate. Other humans in the arena tried to follow Jerk's lead, but lacked his precision and calm. They made small progress, surviving longer than expected, but still suffered heavy blows. One fell into a shallow pit, another was cornered against a jagged platform. Jerk moved to support only when he could do so without exposing himself unnecessarily. His priority was not just survival, it was proving a point, showing the galaxy that humans were not the weaklings everyone assumed. As the fight continued, Jerk began using the environment more creatively. He led the creature toward a series of narrow platforms that restricted its movement, forcing it to adjust its attacks. Each misstep, each hesitation was an opportunity. A carefully timed push sent the creature stumbling, and for the first time it faltered visibly. The crowd reacted with astonishment. Some gasped, unable to reconcile their expectations with what they were witnessing. The announcer, trying to maintain control, struggled to fill the silence with mockery, but even he faltered. "This human survives longer than expected," the voice admitted, a hint of disbelief seeping through the mechanical tone. Jerk moved calmly, never rushing, never showing fear. His breathing was steady, his focus unwavering. Every human has instincts, he thought, and every human can survive if they respect the rules of observation, patience, and strategy. He noticed how the creature favored its right limb when striking, how its balance shifted slightly when angry or frustrated. These small observations became the foundation of his counterattacks. Slowly, the creature's confidence eroded. Its strikes became reckless, its movements predictable. Jerk exploited each opening with precision, using minimal force to guide the fight. At one point, he ducked under a sweeping claw and used the creature's own momentum to push it into a shallow trench. The alien roared in frustration, struggling to regain footing. The crowd erupted in a mix of shock and excitement. Humans had survived encounters that no one believed possible. By now, the remaining human warriors were inspired. They observed Jerk closely, learning from his technique and timing. The arena had become not just a place of combat, but a place of education for those who dared to pay attention. The other species noticed as well. Warriors who had once mocked humans now whispered among themselves, trying to understand how these fragile creatures could endure so much. There was admiration in some eyes, even fear in others. As the battle drew to a close, Jerk had cornered the creature against the highest platform in the arena. It lunged one final time, but Jerk sidestepped, allowing the attack to miss completely. Using the minimal leverage of the terrain, he pushed the alien gently but effectively, sending it off balance and onto the lower platform. It was stunned, surprised, and vulnerable. The battle had lasted far longer than anyone expected. The audience, once mocking, now erupted into astonished cheers. Humans had survived again, and for the first time the galaxy could not dismiss them as weak. After the fight, the surviving humans were allowed to regroup. Jerk did not celebrate. He walked among them calmly, offering silent guidance. His eyes scanned the arena for the next challenge, already planning, already calculating. The lesson was clear. Strength was important, but endurance, strategy, and observation could overcome even the most formidable opponents. The humans had proven they could survive, and the crowd had begun to understand that human resilience was something new, something they had not anticipated. In the stands, whispers spread like wildfire. "They are not weak," one elder muttered. "They endure what no one else could." Children pointed at Jerk, wide-eyed and awed. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humans as inferior now began to reconsider. Even the arena masters, who thrived on predictability, were forced to admit that these humans were an anomaly, a species that could not be easily classified or underestimated. Jerk's mind was already moving ahead. The next opponent would be stronger, faster, and more cunning. He knew he could not rely solely on endurance this time. Adaptation would be key. Observation would remain his ally and patience his shield. The humans, small and fragile as they seemed, had survived not by fighting harder, but by thinking smarter, by refusing to give in to fear, by turning every disadvantage into an opportunity. The galaxy was watching, and Jerk intended to ensure that no one would ever forget what humans could endure. As the next challenge was announced, Jerk stepped forward. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the panic and confusion around him. He had become the symbol of human potential, the quiet force that refused to bow to expectation. The arena was no longer a place of mockery for humans. It was a stage where their true strengths could emerge. And Jerk was ready to lead, not just for himself, but for every human who had been underestimated, dismissed, or laughed at. The lights of the arena shifted, casting long shadows across the platform. The new opponent approached, larger and more imposing than any before. But Jerk's eyes did not waver. He understood one thing clearly: the galaxy could mock humans, doubt humans, and dismiss them, but humans would endure. Humans would adapt. Humans would survive. And when the time came, humans would astonish the galaxy in ways no one could predict. The crowd held its collective breath as Jerk prepared for the next round. For the first time, the laughter had disappeared entirely. In its place was something new. Anticipation, fear, and the realization that the humans, small and fragile as they seemed, had just begun to reveal their true nature. The arena lights shifted, glowing brighter as a new match was announced. The spectators, who had once laughed at the humans, now whispered with tension. Across the galaxy, warriors from countless worlds leaned forward in their viewing chambers. None had ever seen a human last so long, and many doubted they would survive what came next. Yet Jerk remained calm, his eyes scanning the arena, his mind already planning. He had survived the first rounds by patience and observation. Now the test would be far greater. The doors at the far end of the arena opened with a deep hiss. A shadow emerged, growing larger with each step. The crowd gasped. Before them stood the champion of the galactic arena, a creature of legend, feared and undefeated across countless systems. Towering over 3 meters, its body was a mass of muscle, armored with natural plating that shimmered in the arena lights. Its limbs ended in blades sharp enough to slice through most metals. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, and every movement radiated deadly confidence. Even the most seasoned alien warriors in the audience held their breath. This was no ordinary opponent. The humans tensed. Their basic gear and small frames seemed almost laughable compared to this living fortress of strength and lethality. Some trembled at the sight, but Jerk did not flinch. He stepped forward, his gaze locked on the champion. There was no fear in his eyes, only focus. Around him, the other humans looked to him for guidance, and though he said nothing, his calm presence gave them strength. He had learned that the arena was not just about brute force. Strategy, observation, and endurance could level even the greatest disparities in strength. The champion roared, a sound that echoed across the arena and vibrated in the stands. The ground beneath it trembled as it advanced. The crowd erupted in cheers, expecting a quick and brutal victory for their hero. They had already placed bets, laughing at the humans' helplessness. Jerk, however, moved slowly, his steps deliberate. He assessed the terrain, noting obstacles, alcoves, and ledges. Every detail was important. The champion's stride was powerful but predictable. Its attacks were deadly, but its movements were anchored in strength rather than subtlety. This gave Jerk the edge he needed. The match began with a deafening clash. The champion lunged forward, swinging a massive clawed arm. Jerk rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. Sparks flew where the creature's blade-like appendage scraped against the metal platform. The audience cheered, their excitement growing at the spectacle, yet confusion mingled with their awe. Most humans would have been crushed in moments, yet Jerk moved with deliberate precision, exploiting openings that even the champion did not realize existed. Minutes passed and the champion began to adjust. It recognized that this human was unlike the others, calm, patient, and responsive. Each feint, each dodge, each subtle movement by Jerk frustrated it. The creature's strikes became faster, sharper, but also less predictable. It tried to corner Jerk, using its superior reach and strength to force the human into a mistake. But Jerk's mind worked faster than any brute force could counter. He used the arena's platforms to his advantage, stepping onto narrow edges, ducking behind barriers, and forcing the champion to overextend. The audience leaned forward, their laughter long gone, replaced by a mix of astonishment and tension. Other humans watched closely, inspired by Jerk's example. Some attempted minor attacks, distracting the champion just enough to allow Jerk to maneuver freely. They were learning. Survival, Jerk had shown them, was not about matching strength, but about observation, patience, and timing. The champion, massive and powerful as it was, had never faced an opponent who refused to be dominated so completely. Each strike it launched carried danger, but also predictable patterns. Jerk exploited them, dodging efficiently, countering subtly, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike decisively. The match's turning point came when the champion lunged aggressively, overconfident in its power. Jerk sidestepped, guiding it toward a narrow platform at the edge of the arena. The champion misjudged the landing, stumbling slightly. It roared in frustration and swung wildly. Jerk used its momentum, pivoting just enough to let the creature's own strength work against it. The movement was precise, careful, and calculated. One wrong strike could kill, but Jerk had learned to trust his instincts and his observations. The crowd erupted, unable to contain their astonishment. What had been expected to be a quick, humiliating defeat for the humans had become a tense, gripping spectacle. No one had anticipated that a single human could outmaneuver and survive against a champion of legendary status. Across the arena, whispers spread like wildfire. "It is still alive and moving with precision," one alien exclaimed. "How can a human endure this?" Another whispered, fear mingling with awe. Even the arena masters, who controlled the spectacle and thrived on predictability, struggled to hide their surprise. Jerk's mind raced, calculating the final moves. He noticed how the champion shifted weight when frustrated, how its claws slightly lagged after rapid swings, and how its balance could be exploited with careful timing. He did not attack recklessly. Each motion was minimal, conserving energy, reducing exposure, and waiting for the critical moment. The audience's focus was absolute, every spectator riveted by the unexpected endurance of this fragile species. As the match continued, Jerk began using subtle counterattacks. A well-placed kick here, a slight push there, enough to unbalance the champion without risking his own safety. The champion's frustration grew with each failed attempt to land a decisive strike. It had never faced an opponent that did not flinch, that adapted instantly, that refused to submit. The audience could feel the tension rising. The champion, once a symbol of unmatched power, now struggled against what appeared to be a mere human. Finally, the critical moment arrived. The champion lunged for a decisive strike, aiming to crush Jerk instantly. But Jerk had anticipated it. He sidestepped perfectly, using the champion's own momentum to guide it toward the arena's unstable edge. With a precise movement, Jerk pushed against the creature's armor at just the right angle. It stumbled, overbalanced, and teetered dangerously close to the edge. The audience gasped collectively, holding their breath. This was the climax no one had expected. The champion roared, clawing at the ground to regain balance. Jerk kept his stance, calm and ready, watching for any chance of a counter. The creature's strength was still immense, its reflexes lightning fast, but it could not correct in time. A final, careful push sent it teetering off the platform, landing with a thundering crash on a lower ledge, stunned and disoriented. The crowd erupted, a mix of disbelief, excitement, and newfound respect. Humans had survived, and not just survived, they had dominated with intelligence, strategy, and endurance. The arena announcer's voice broke through the noise, unable to hide his astonishment. "The human survives against the champion." "Unbelievable," he exclaimed, a rare note of sincerity in his usually mocking tone. Across the galaxy, transmissions buzzed with reports of the match. Commentators replayed Jerk's movements, analyzing his strategy. Analysts from every species debated how a fragile human could overcome a legendary warrior. The idea that humans were weak began to crumble under the weight of evidence. Jerk did not celebrate. He moved among the surviving humans, offering silent guidance and subtle reassurance. His eyes scanned the arena, already anticipating the next challenge. He understood that brute strength would continue to grow in difficulty, but the principle remained the same. Observation, adaptation, patience, and endurance were far more powerful than raw power alone. The humans had survived. They had turned what the galaxy believed into a spectacle that forced others to rethink everything they knew. The other human warriors were inspired. They moved with more confidence, learned from Jerk's example, and began to believe in their own abilities. For the first time, the arena no longer seemed insurmountable. Jerk had shown them that survival against the greatest threats was possible, even probable, if one relied on intelligence, strategy, and the unyielding human will. As the lights shifted again, signaling the next round, Jerk's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the panic and confusion around him. His mind calculated, his body ready. The galaxy had begun to notice that humans were something new, something unexpected. They were not merely fragile creatures to be mocked. They were adaptive, resilient, and unbreakable in ways no other species had yet understood. The crowd watched with bated breath. The laughter and mockery of previous rounds had vanished. In its place was awe, fear, and anticipation. Across the arena, whispers of human resilience spread, carrying the unspoken message that the galaxy's expectations had been wrong. The humans were no longer mere participants. They were contenders, capable of astonishing feats. Jerk's eyes swept across the arena, noting every detail, every shadow, every potential hazard. The next opponent would be faster, stronger, and smarter, but Jerk did not doubt. He understood that humans could not compete in raw power, but they could outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver any foe. The challenge ahead was immense, but so was the potential. The arena held its breath as the next challenger prepared to enter. Jerk stood ready, calm, and focused. He had survived against the champion, proven the human spirit's endurance, and inspired both his own kind and the galaxy watching. The humans had become a new force to reckon with, and no one would ever underestimate them again. The first truly formidable test was behind them, but the greatest challenges lay ahead. And Jerk, with the patience, intellect, and unyielding will of a human, was prepared to face them all. The arena lights pulsed with anticipation as the next challenge was announced. The crowd, which had once mocked the humans, now watched in silent awe. News of Jerk's survival against the champion had spread through the galaxy in hours, sparking debates, curiosity, and disbelief. Alien species that had dismissed humans as fragile now leaned forward in their seats, trying to comprehend the resilience of a species they thought powerless. The arena masters, who controlled the spectacle, exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to handle this unprecedented turn of events. Jerk stood at the center of the arena, calm and focused, while his fellow humans adjusted their positions behind him. They had learned from his example, and though fear lingered, determination burned brightly in their eyes. The humans no longer moved as prey, they moved as a team, small but strategic. Every eye in the arena was on Jerk, the quiet human who had survived when none expected him to. Some spectators whispered of courage, others of foolishness, but no one could look away. The doors at the far end of the arena hissed open, revealing a new opponent, one far more formidable than anything the humans had faced before. It was an enormous creature, taller and broader than the previous champion, covered in jagged armor like scales. Its limbs ended in multi-jointed claws, each capable of slicing through the toughest metals. Its eyes glowed a deep red, scanning the humans with an intelligence that seemed almost alien. Every step it took shook the arena floor, and the crowd erupted in anticipation. This was no ordinary competitor. It was a warrior bred for combat, undefeated and hungry for victory. The humans braced themselves. Their weapons were simple, their armor minimal, and their bodies fragile compared to the towering creature. Yet Jerk did not flinch. He stepped forward with the same calm resolve that had carried him through earlier battles. The crowd had learned by now that he was not an ordinary human. He was a strategist, patient and unyielding. He understood that brute force alone would not win the fight. Observation, timing, and adaptability would be his allies, and he would use every advantage the arena offered. The match began with a deafening roar. The creature lunged forward, its claws flashing dangerously. Jerk rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the first strike, then pivoted and moved to higher ground. The creature followed, its speed impressive, but Jerk's movements were deliberate, calculated. Every step, every dodge was designed to test the opponent, to learn its patterns and weaknesses. The audience watched in stunned silence. This was not a human panicking or fleeing. This was a human analyzing, surviving, and controlling the pace of the battle. The creature swung again, aiming to crush Jerk instantly. He ducked under the attack, using a narrow ledge to maintain distance. Small human figures could easily be crushed under its claws, but Jerk used the arena's structure to his advantage, forcing the creature to overextend. His mind raced as he noted its movements, the weight shifts, the balance, the slight delay after each strike. These observations would guide his counterattacks. The arena had been designed for spectacle, but it now became a chessboard with humans and monsters as pieces. Minutes stretched into tension-filled rounds. The other humans, inspired by Jerk, attempted minor attacks and distractions, but it was his guidance, unspoken yet clear, that allowed them to survive. The creature's frustration grew with every missed strike. It was accustomed to opponents who faltered, who panicked, who submitted. Jerk did none of these. He moved with purpose, using feints, sudden shifts, and subtle counterattacks to frustrate and exhaust the alien. The audience could feel the shift. Laughter had disappeared entirely. Every spectator watched with awe, fear, and growing respect. At one point, the creature attempted a powerful leap, aiming to end the fight decisively. Jerk anticipated it, sidestepping at the last moment and guiding the creature toward a narrow platform. The momentum of its own attack caused it to stumble. Jerk used this opportunity to strike lightly, just enough to push the creature closer to the edge. It roared in anger and frustration, its glowing eyes narrowing as it realized the human's cunning. The crowd erupted in disbelief. None had expected that a human could manipulate a creature so strong, so fast, so lethal without relying on strength. Jerk continued to use strategy over power. He led the creature through unstable sections of the arena, forcing it to overreach and expose vulnerabilities. He observed its breathing, its timing, its reactions to pressure, and he adapted with every moment. The humans were no longer merely surviving. They were learning, evolving, becoming more capable under his silent guidance. The arena, designed to showcase raw power, had been transformed into a stage for intellect, endurance, and the unbreakable human spirit. The creature's attacks became more desperate, less precise. It tried to use intimidation, striking the platforms with crushing force, hoping the humans would panic. But Jerk remained composed. He moved with minimal effort, avoiding unnecessary risk, and focused on guiding the battle to his advantage. The audience was mesmerized. Across the galaxy, viewers who had dismissed humans as weak were now witnessing an unprecedented display of resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. Finally, the moment arrived. The creature lunged for a final strike, aiming to crush Jerk with its overwhelming power. But Jerk had studied it thoroughly, calculated its balance, and anticipated the trajectory. With a subtle shift, he dodged, using the creature's momentum against it. A well-timed push sent the massive opponent teetering near the arena's edge. The crowd gasped collectively, holding their breath as the champion of champions wavered. Jerk's focus never wavered. He had turned the battle into a test not of strength, but of control, patience, and precision. The creature stumbled and fell partially off the platform, unable to recover. Its roar of frustration echoed through the arena, but it was clear the fight had shifted. The humans, small and fragile as they seemed, had not only survived, they had dominated through strategy and endurance. The crowd erupted, a mix of shock, excitement, and awe. The arena announcer, usually mocking, struggled to contain his amazement. "The human outlasts the ultimate champion?" he shouted, voice trembling with disbelief. Across the galaxy, analysts and commentators debated how a human could achieve what seemed impossible. Jerk moved calmly among his fellow humans, offering silent guidance and reassurance. He understood that brute strength alone could not win, but intelligence, adaptability, and relentless determination could. The other humans drew confidence from his example, their fear replaced by belief in their own abilities. For the first time, the arena had become a place of human triumph, not ridicule. The galaxy had begun to witness something extraordinary. Humans were not weak. They were resilient, adaptive, and unyielding. The lights shifted again, signaling the conclusion of the match. Jerk surveyed the arena, already anticipating the challenges to come. The humans had survived the deadliest opponents yet, proving that courage, strategy, and endurance could surpass brute force. The arena, designed to mock them, had become a proving ground for the unbreakable human spirit. Spectators whispered across the stands. "Humans, they endure," one elder murmured. "They survive when all else fails." Children pointed at Jerk, wide-eyed and amazed. Across galaxies, viewers transmitted stories of the human who refused to yield, inspiring countless beings to reconsider everything they believed about this fragile species. Even the arena masters, who controlled every spectacle, realized that humans could no longer be treated as simple entertainment. They had proven themselves capable of astonishing feats. Jerk did not celebrate. He moved silently, observing, planning, and preparing for what would come next. The greatest challenges were still ahead, but he had shown that humans could not only survive, they could astonish. Every movement, every decision, every instance of patience and calculation had brought them to this point. The crowd had witnessed the limits of human endurance and the power of intellect combined with resilience. As the next round approached, Jerk's calm focus contrasted sharply with the panic, excitement, and tension around him. The humans had proven themselves to the galaxy. They were no longer the fragile, weak species that others mocked. They were contenders, capable of facing overwhelming odds and emerging victorious. The arena held its collective breath, awaiting the next test, but one truth was clear. Humans, led by their quiet strategist, had become a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. The lights pulsed again, casting long shadows across the arena. The humans prepared, ready for the next battle, their hearts steady, their minds sharp, and their spirits unbroken. Jerk's eyes swept across the arena, noting every detail, every potential hazard, every opportunity. He knew the challenges ahead would grow even more dangerous, but he had confidence in one thing: humans endured, humans adapted, and humans, when pushed to the brink, could achieve the extraordinary. The crowd waited, breathless. The laughter of the past was gone. In its place was astonishment, respect, and anticipation. The humans had survived, endured, and proven their true nature. And as Jerk prepared for the next challenge, it was clear that the galaxy's perception of humanity would never be the same again. The arena pulsed with anticipation as the final match was announced. The crowd, once mocking and jeering at the humans, now sat in awe, leaning forward, whispering to each other with a mix of fear and admiration. Across the galaxy, transmissions showed the fragile species standing tall against opponents no one expected them to survive. The humans had proven themselves in every challenge so far, and all eyes were on Jerk, the quiet strategist who had inspired and led them through impossible odds. The humans stood at the center of the arena, their breathing steady, their eyes alert. The smaller ones followed Jerk's lead, moving as a unit, careful, precise, and aware of every detail around them. They had learned to survive, but now the stakes were higher than ever. The next opponent was a creature spoken of in whispers across systems, a being bred solely for combat, faster than thought, stronger than measured, and intelligent beyond normal comprehension. Its armor shimmered with an unnatural hue, its claws capable of slicing through any known material. Its red eyes glowed with predatory focus. The crowd erupted, many unsure if the humans could survive this ultimate test. Jerk studied the opponent calmly. He had faced formidable enemies before, but this was the ultimate challenge. He knew that sheer strength could not win this fight. Observation, patience, strategy, and adaptability would decide the outcome. He motioned subtly to the other humans, guiding them without words. They understood. Every step, every feint, every small maneuver was synchronized. The humans were no longer individuals fighting for survival. They were a single unit, guided by the calm mind of Jerk. The match began with a thunderous roar. The creature charged, moving faster than the human eye could easily follow. Its claws struck with deadly precision, tearing through the arena floor and sending debris flying. Jerk rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the lethal strike. He had anticipated the creature's movement, and he guided it carefully toward a section of the arena with uneven platforms and jagged edges. Every misstep would be crucial. The humans worked together, drawing the creature's attention in subtle ways. Small attacks and feints distracted it, forcing it to overextend. Jerk observed every reaction, every shift in balance, every moment of hesitation. The creature had been undefeated for countless matches, yet it was being forced to adjust constantly, unable to dominate as it had in the past. The crowd was silent now, unable to contain the tension. This was no longer entertainment. It was a lesson in human resilience and ingenuity. Minutes stretched into intense observation and calculation. The humans, once considered fragile, were adapting quickly. Jerk used every advantage of the arena. Narrow ledges to restrict movement, elevated platforms to create distance, unstable surfaces to force mistakes. The creature's attacks became more desperate, more reckless, as it tried to overwhelm its opponents with sheer power. Yet Jerk remained calm, moving minimally, conserving energy and guiding the battle with precision. At one point, the creature lunged for a decisive strike. Jerk sidestepped at the last moment, using the creature's momentum against it. He guided it toward a precarious ledge, where even a slight misstep could cause it to fall. The humans watched closely, following his subtle guidance, supporting him when necessary. Each movement, each adjustment brought them closer to victory. The crowd could hardly believe what they were seeing. A human, small and fragile, controlling the flow of battle against a creature bred for absolute dominance. The creature roared, frustrated, its claws slicing the air. It struck with relentless precision, attempting to crush Jerk instantly. But the human moved with calm foresight, avoiding the strikes, exploiting every overreach, every imbalance. The humans had become more than survivors. They were learners, adapting quickly to the flow of the fight. The audience held its collective breath. No one had anticipated this. The laughter and mockery of previous rounds were completely gone. Only astonishment remained. Finally, the critical moment arrived. The creature made a powerful leap, aiming to end the fight decisively. Jerk anticipated the trajectory, dodged skillfully, and guided the creature to the unstable ledge. Its own momentum betrayed it. With a precise push, he sent the creature teetering dangerously close to the edge. It struggled to regain balance, but the humans had forced it into a position where it could no longer recover easily. The audience erupted in collective gasps. Across the galaxy, millions watched the feed, unable to believe what they saw. Humans, long dismissed as weak, had turned the tide against the ultimate combatant. The creature fell partially off the ledge, landing awkwardly on a lower platform, stunned and vulnerable. Jerk did not attack recklessly. He knew the creature's strength could still harm him. Instead, he used calculated, minimal movements to maintain advantage, guiding it into a position where escape was nearly impossible. The other humans moved with him, synchronized and precise, every small action adding to the final outcome. The arena, designed to mock and dominate, had been transformed into a stage of human ingenuity, endurance, and unbreakable will. The final strike was not flashy. It did not rely on brute force or destruction. Jerk used the creature's own momentum and imbalance to push it further until it could not recover. It stumbled, fell, and lay still. Silence swept through the arena. For the first time, the audience did not cheer, did not laugh. They were stunned, unable to process what they had witnessed. A human had survived the ultimate test, defeated the deadliest opponent, and done so through intelligence, strategy, and sheer unyielding determination. The arena announcer's voice trembled with disbelief. "The human has done the impossible," he shouted. Across the galaxy, commentators replayed the match, analyzing Jerk's movements, studying every dodge, every subtle push, every calculated maneuver. The idea that humans were weak had been shattered. Across species, admiration, fear, and astonishment spread. The humans, long underestimated, had proven that endurance, intelligence, and courage could overcome even the greatest power. Jerk moved calmly among his fellow humans, silent but reassuring. He had led them through the impossible, and had shown them that victory was possible when fear was replaced by strategy and determination. The other humans drew strength from his example, understanding that their own resilience and adaptability were as powerful as any weapon. The arena had been a crucible, testing their courage, endurance, and intellect. They had passed, not just surviving, but triumphing in a way that changed the galaxy's perception forever. The crowd, initially filled with laughter and mockery, now cheered with awe. Species across the galaxy who had doubted humanity now whispered their admiration. Humans were no longer fragile creatures to dismiss. They were warriors capable of facing impossible odds, adapting, and succeeding. Even the arena masters, who had controlled every spectacle, recognized the unprecedented. Humans had demonstrated that survival was not about raw power alone. It was about intelligence, strategy, teamwork, and unyielding will. Jerk looked around the arena, observing the faces of the crowd, the other humans, and the fallen opponent. He felt no pride, only resolve. The lesson had been proven. Humanity could endure, adapt, and overcome. The galaxy had witnessed the unbreakable spirit of humans, and there was no turning back. The mockery, the assumptions, the dismissals, all had been shattered in the crucible of the arena. The humans regrouped, preparing to exit. Their bodies were battered, their muscles tired, but their spirits soared. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Across the galaxy, stories of their triumph spread like wildfire. Analysts, commentators, and spectators debated what they had seen, trying to understand how a species so small and seemingly fragile could defeat creatures of unimaginable strength. The answer was simple, yet profound. Humans endured, adapted, and refused to give up. As the humans walked from the arena, led by Jerk, the crowd erupted into cheers that were no longer mocking. The audience had witnessed history. Humanity, long dismissed, had proven that strength was not only measured in muscle or weaponry, but in courage, strategy, and the unyielding heart of those who refused to surrender. Across the galaxy, humans became a symbol of resilience, adaptability, and hope. Jerk glanced back at the arena one last time. Every obstacle, every opponent, every challenge had been a lesson. The humans had survived, and they had changed perceptions forever. The crowd continued to cheer, and even the arena masters nodded in respect. Humanity had arrived, not as fragile, weak creatures, but as warriors, thinkers, and survivors capable of astonishing feats. The story of that day would be told across worlds for generations. Children would grow up hearing of the quiet human who had survived the deadliest battles, teaching that courage, intelligence, and endurance could triumph over brute strength. Jerk and his fellow humans had not only survived the arena, they had changed the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. In that moment, humanity's place in the galaxy shifted. From mocked underdogs to respected warriors, the humans had proven that survival was only the beginning. Endurance, adaptability, strategy, and heart had triumphed where raw power could not. And for the first time in the history of the galactic arena, a species once thought fragile had shown that it could astonish, inspire, and endure beyond imagination. The humans exited the arena to the sound of cheers, admiration, and awe. The galaxy watched, and all who had doubted them knew one truth: humans were not weak. They were resilient, clever, and unyielding. They had survived, adapted, and conquered, not through sheer power, but through the very qualities that made them uniquely human. And as Jerk led his people into a new era of recognition, the message was clear: underestimate humanity at your peril. The arena lights dimmed, but the story would shine across galaxies forever. The humans had endured, and the galaxy had finally learned that sometimes the smallest and seemingly weakest could achieve the greatest victories.